Welcome to Charting New Paths in Pre-K through 12 Education, a podcast by Solution Tree. In our Reaching Summit 2024 mini-series, we'll talk about the Summit on PLC at Work event coming up in February. For this mini-series, we invite some of the keynote speakers and presenters for this event to share their past experiences, expertise, and valuable insights with you. Listen to this mini-series and be inspired to add another tool to your toolbox of research-affirmed strategies once you explore and once you attempt this event to improve student outcomes. I'm your host, Prisma Lopez Marine. Enjoy today's episode. Hello, everyone. In today's episode, we are introducing a new mini-series, the Reaching Summit 2024 series. The summit we're reaching is, in particular, the Summit on PLC at Work, coming up on February 13th through the 15th of 2024. We are in the new year, and this event is taking place in Phoenix, Arizona. To learn more about this event, navigate to our website, solutiontree.com. Under the Events tab, go to On-Site Events, and then click on the Summit on PLC at Work. We are joined by one of the keynote speakers for this event, Mike Mattis. Mr. Mattis is an internationally recognized author, presenter, and practitioner who specializes in uniting teachers, administrators, and support staff to transform schools by implementing response to intervention and professional learning communities. Mike co-created the RTI at Work model, which builds on the foundation of the PLC at Work process by using team structures and a focus on learning, collaboration, and results to drive successful outcomes. Mr. Mattis, thank you so much for joining us for this episode.
Hi, good morning, and thank you for having me. Honored to be part of this podcast.
Thank you. We're so excited to have you. Your energy is just like so motivating at all times. It doesn't matter when we're speaking to you, whether it's an event, whether it's in an interview, whether we're doing a webinar. It's just so exciting to have you always. So let's talk about the upcoming Summit on PLC at Work. You have been speaking at the event for many years. So how long has that been part of your vocation?
You know, I was thinking about it. I think this is the 9th or the 10th year that I've had just the absolute privilege of being a faculty member on at the PLC at Work Summit. In my world of both PLC at Work and as an educator and as someone who also does some PD, I've always viewed the summit as kind of like the Super Bowl. It is like the biggest event on that topic in the entire year. And well, I think it's the 9th or 10th year, as I said, that I've actually had the chance to be a lead teacher there. I attended it as an educator, as a principal, as a site principal, long before I was ever asked to speak at it. I actually used to pay my own way. I had a very limited site budget, and I didn't want to spend it on myself. We were going to send people to go to learning events. I wanted to be the teachers that I supported. So I would spend my own way and use my own sick days to go. So to be asked to actually be a speaker at is like every year when I get the invitation from Solution Tree, I pinch myself like I am just so fortunate to have the chance to be part of that event.
But that's full circle.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, when I think the very first time that I went to the event, it came on the recommendation of Dr. Rick DeFore, and that event has always been, Solution Tree is as a publishing company, you have like a who's who in education when you think about who you publish, and as a site educator, teacher, and a principal, we always lean into what's proven to work, and we're always trying to continue to learn. So the first summit I ever went to, that's the first place I ever heard assessment expert Rick Stiggins speak. I'd read his work, never heard him talk about it in person. Larry Lazat, a legend and icon in the effective schools movement. First time I ever saw him speak was at that event. First time I ever heard Bob Marzano speak. Probably read 10 of his books up to that point, but never heard him articulate it in person, her and them there. Obviously, Rick DeFore, Bob Baker, Becky DeFore, but it was, it's awesome to read people's work, but when you can hear them talk about it in a more non-formal setting, and often too, Solution Tree authors will like break out their newest research at that event too. So you often are hearing things that they're studying, thinking about, even sometimes before it gets into their newest writing. So for those reasons, I always circled those dates on my calendar as a side educator. And it was the kind of the mid-year pick-me-up when you're kind of in the doldrums of the middle of the year, and all of a sudden it's like you come back with some new ideas and you come recharged and you're around usually a couple thousand other people who are excited about being an educator. And how do you not go back pumped up for the second half of the year going, yes, we can do this with a new idea or two that's going to help more kids learn. So cool stuff.
So it's a perfect time. Well, obviously Solution Tree knows what they're doing, but it's a perfect time to do it in February so that it does give you that oomph and that ready to go spirit for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I think about it's kind of like a formative assessment. You get a chance to hear this research, kind of assess it yourself in your school as an educator, because you leave you also with some things confirmed. Hey, we're on the right track here. We're on the right track there, and maybe we misinterpreted this, and maybe we've just missed the boat on this topic that we need to think about a bit more. So then you still have the rest of the half of the year left to go back and do things, because I've always felt this way too. As I spent most of my career as a classroom teacher. I always felt like, the school year starts and you're getting your students used to the flow of your school, the flow of your classroom, teaching them rules, behaviors, expectations, building those relationships. Sometimes you got to backfill for students where they walked in missing some key things. But I always felt like that kind of like after Christmas up till spring break, that's like the biggest chunk of learning time of the entire year, where your kids are clear on how we work together. You built some foundational things, and the heart of the things kids have to learn this year to be ready for next year. You got that span of time. Spring break comes and the end of year state tests come, and you blink and the school year's done. But that chunk of time is just, man, it's so important for kids and for teachers. So,
yeah. But it's such a heavy time for teachers. It's just, there's so much that they have to prepare for their professional development, in addition to getting students ready for it all.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So there is a great amount of activity during these events. I'm talking about the summit in particular. What do you look forward to each year at the event?
Couple of things. One, I've already referenced this, when I would attend as a participant, and still to this day, when I have the honor of working with Solution Tree at one of their regular events, let's say a PLC at Work Institute or an RTI at Work Institute or workshop, I am teaching the whole time. And because of that, if it is an institute where I have other colleagues, experts speaking on other topics, I'm presenting the same time they are. So I don't get a chance to watch other educators teach much. But at the summit, I'll do the opening keynote, and I'll do one breakout on day one and one breakout on day two in a panel. But there are concurrent keynotes and an afternoon keynote and breakouts every day. And that gives me a chance to actually go hear other people. Like 2 years ago, for the first time ever, got to see in person and not just read his work. Tom Schwimmer, the assessment and grading expert. Oh, man, just phenomenal. Learned so much in that 90 minutes. And again, that's my chance to learn. So one thing I always look forward to is this is an event I go as a learner just as much as I go as a teacher. And I always leave with brand new ideas. Two, I'm so blessed that both their educators on the faculty that are dear friends that I don't always see every year. And over the years, I'm honored to work with Solution Tree, and you guys are a hell of a company, or a heck of a company. And there are people at Solution Tree I don't see every year. But often, because it's kind of like the Solution Tree Super Bowl, often a number of your people are there. So it's like going to a family reunion to me also, where I get to catch up with lots of people that A, I care about, and B, we have the same vision to transform education to ensure learning for everyone, every student and every educator. So when you get together with smart people and you have a common cause and you work with them over time, so you consider them a friend, not just a colleague. So I always look forward to that piece of it too. Then the third thing is this. I referenced this one earlier too. I think if there's one thing that educators need right now, it's hope. Coming off this pandemic, it was hard on all of us, and I don't think we fully understood the strain that we as a profession, we as a society went through. And the other thing is, it certainly hurt students when it came to their social emotional learning, their behaviors, and their educational achievement. We kind of shut down our world for a year and a half, and hard to be a teacher when you're looking through a Zoom screen at kids, or you're keeping kids 6 feet apart, or you're just worried about surviving that day. My point is this: we're still asked to have every child learn at high levels, grade level or better, every kid. So it could just be daunting right now. It was hard to get every child there before there was a pandemic, but coming off it, and if you enter any day in your job feeling like what you're being asked to do is impossible and you just feel overwhelmed, then it's hard. It's hard to even want to stay in the profession or to give it the energy and focus that it deserves when you feel like you're pushing a rock uphill. You go to this event, like almost all Solution Tree events, and you go and the other educators are there and you're learning together and you see a pathway forward that's doable, it's logical, it's proven to work. And the energy in that room of having hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of educators that are pumped up, like we can do this. And they mean it. It's like, this is doable work. It's something that we can directly control. It can make a difference for kids. It's like, I just, that's how you get hope. Hope is not blind faith tomorrow will be better. And hope doesn't mean instantly things will be better, but you see a pathway to how things can get better. And you actually can have direct influence upon that. You're not hoping for someone else to come and save the day. Yeah. We have within our own sphere of influence the ability to make tomorrow a better day for our students and for the noble professionals that serve our students. And so those are all the reasons why I just so look forward to the summit every year.
That's incredible. And I do appreciate that note to Solution Tree. I've only been here for a minute compared to everybody else, but you're right. It is. It's like a family. It's like people you've known for so long, but you have only met them for 1 or 2 years. And it's also the take on Solution Tree for me is that it is a genuine company with a genuine purpose that truly means what they are preaching, basically.
In fact, I could ask you a question. You ready?
Yeah.
If we believe that the PLC at Work process, working collaboratively towards a shared mission in which you work interdependently to achieve that, and you collect actual evidence, you base your decisions upon research and results, does Solution Tree work like a professional learning community?
Exactly. Yes.
Totally.
Yes.
Totally. Everyone I work with there. I mean, you can cite your mission, you can cite your vision, your core values, and you hold each other accountable to it, and you're working towards a shared mission, right?
Wow. That's
Yeah.
like an epiphany. Like I didn't even...
Yeah. So that's why it's cool to work with you also, because I believe in the process and I'm working for not for, but with a company, because I'm not on your all's payroll. I'm an independent educator, but I'm working with a company that's trying to practice the exact same research-based practices that we are teaching to educators. That's cool. That's cool.
That is, and it is unique there in terms of like different companies. All right, so at the summit, you will deliver the morning keynote one day on day one, as you mentioned. Your keynote is titled "Revisiting Professional Learning Communities at Work." This title, of course, comes from the book of the same name, the classic work by Rick Dufour, Becky Dufour, and Bob Baker. You and Anthony Mohammed, Dr. Anthony Mohammed, joined this list of authors for the second edition, which came out in 2021. Let's get into the book. Can you elaborate on the significance of this book?
The PLC at Work process, originally created by Rick Dufour, Bob Baker. The very first book came out 25 years ago. And we define a professional learning community as a never-ending process where we work collaboratively to ensure higher levels of learning for the students that we serve. I say that never-ending process part, as long as there are students that are still struggling, we as a profession have room to improve. So it's about continuously learning. So this movement started with a book based upon research and based upon action research in actual schools, Stevenson High School. This is a practitioner-driven movement. Rick Dufour, Bob Baker, and then Becky Dufour joined the writing team a decade after the first book to say, what have we learned? What has the research continued to validate that the tenets of the PLC process are solid, sound, proven even more so to work? And what are things that we've learned, not only through research, but also through more and more schools embracing the process, living it, and finding better ways to do certain elements of it. So they wrote Revisiting Professional Learning Communities at Work. The first edition of that book was actually the follow-up to the original work. And then about 10 years after that, Anthony Mohammed and I were honored to be asked by Dr. Bob Baker to let's revisit this again. Are we still clear and sound that the research base of the PLC work process is solid? And what have we learned? And how do we build it into the context of today? Well, that's what the book that you referenced, that is. So it's the third edition, let's say, of the original book that started the entire movement.
I like how you say it is a movement, in fact.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. In revisiting in the appendix, we provide 9-10 pages that represent over 25 years of research confirming that the PLC at Work process is practices that are proven to work. When I do the opening keynote, the way I'm going to frame the opening is this way. I'll make it quite personal. Mentioned multiple times now. I spent 23 years on site. And when I started my profession, I remember the first staff development days that I went to. And at that time, it was Madeline Hunter, direct instruction. That was the answer. And so we need to be trained in direct instruction pedagogies. But 2 years later, that kind of died away. The next became critical thinking. We got to teach kids how to critical think, and teachers need to embrace better questioning strategies. And let's use Bloom's taxonomy. And that lasted a couple of years, and that died out. Then interdisciplinary units. Teachers need to work at interdisciplinary teams and help kids make connections between concepts. And that lasted a few years. And then there's going to be technology. Kids need to use technology. Teachers need to use technology. We got to train you in technology. Here's how you use computers. Here's how you use those. And that was a few years. And then No Child Left Behind passed. And everything turned into high stakes tests. How do you prep kids for those tests? So you got to learn the format of that test. And how do you write tests in your class that match the format of the state test? And that was like 5 or 6 years. And my point is this: we never stick with anything. So as a site educator, you start to feel like this. Every time you're asked to go to a staff development day or you're sent off to a conference, part of you is skeptical. And why? Because you think this too shall pass. Even if it sounds pretty good, we won't stick with it. And you don't get great at something overnight. So if you don't stick with it over time, you'll never get good at it. and we never stuck with anything. When I was required to go to a training on PLCs for the first time, and I say required, I didn't enter that room with hope. I never heard of PLCs. I left that room changed because A, it just made sense. All the tenants just, it was common sense. But my point I'm building to is this. Tell me any educational research or reform movement that has grown stronger every year for a quarter century. Just tell me one. I'll wait.
Yeah.
I can think of nothing like this in my entire career, where what if every year more research confirms it's the right work, more schools and districts embrace the work. We started with one model school where all this started, Stevenson High School, Adlai Stevenson High School. Now we have, if you go to the all things PLC.info website, we have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of model schools and districts proving that this works. Large schools, small schools, elementary, middle, high school, brick and mortar, virtual, alternative, charter. You name the kind of school, we can show you a school getting markedly better results doing this work. And that's just, I mean, there's been nothing like this in my time in education. And I'm an old US history teacher. I can't look back at a time in American educational history where for 25 years, a process that helps more kids learn has grown every year in both research-based and actual schools proving that it works. So that's how I'm going to frame the beginning of that opening keynote is we know this works. And now more than ever is a time we double down on doing this work really, really well.
I love the description of you saying that it is our Super Bowl. It's the Super Bowl for the education sector in pre-K through 12. So it is definitely something that
the Oscars of PLC.
Yes,
all the PLCs.
If you haven't gone yet, it is something that definitely at some point in your education profession to go to. Actually, I ran into one of my teachers in the grocery store. I think last weekend, and I told her where I worked, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I know Solution Tree." I'm like, "This is so cool!" Like educators that I knew in my life know what Solution Tree is, and she mentioned the event too. So on day one, you will also deliver the breakout session, as you mentioned. It's called Taking Action: How to Create a Highly Effective Multi-Tiered System of Supports. What can attendees expect from this breakout?
Yeah, we're going to dig into what we would call PLC critical question 3. How do we collectively respond when kids don't learn? In the PLC work process, anytime you want to get better at something to help kids, you don't guess how to do it. We look at research. Is there clarity, consensus on the best way you should systematically respond when kids don't learn? At our time in our profession, yes. We lean into the research base of RTI, response to intervention, or MTSS, a multi-tiered system of support. So in this breakout, we're going to dig into how the PLC at work process is the foundation to an effective system of interventions, and then what a system like that looks like. So there's been a federal mandate since the reauthorization of special ed law in 2004 that RTI is the foundational work of the preferred way that schools respond when kids don't learn over a traditional special ed model. But sadly, lots of schools are struggling to do it on how to do it. They know they should do it. They're trying to do it. And it's often because they think they have an intervention problem, but they haven't built the conditions for an intervention system to work. It's going to take a school-wide collaborative effort, embedded collaboration, the PLC process. It's going to take clarity on what you want kids to learn. That's PLC critical question 1. What do we expect students to learn? It's got to have an ongoing form of assessment process. That's PLC question 2. How do we know kids have learned it? And if we haven't built that collaborative culture, instructional focus, we're not gathering the right information about kids and what they're learning in real time, it's hard to intervene later. So that breakout will be tying the PLC at work process and a multi-tiered system of support together so people can see it's complementary and it's a critical foundational step to an effective system of interventions. That's where that breakout's going to be on. It's based upon our book, Taking Action, which is our best how-to book of the RTI work process.
Nice. So in addition to your keynote, you're also working. You are working here. This is one of the evidence of what Solution Tree brings to the table, where our, keynotes aren't just, hanging out and, drinking coffee. They're out here working in the events as well, but also coexisting with educators in the event.
Yep, absolutely. 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 In fact, I think something that is a hallmark of Solution Tree events is the faculty is very available to the participants in multiple ways to ask questions. And as being a faculty member now, and someone who used to approach the faculty members, but now I'm blessed to be one of them, I'm always honored by that, because you're getting questions of what's going on in real life campuses right now and what they're struggling with. And we always learn from each other. We have a chance to chat with fellow educators. So yeah, a lot of formal and informal time to learn together.
We just talked about that learning doesn't stop on day 2. You're also going to sit on a panel to discuss and deliver a breakout on behavior solutions. So let's start with the panel discussion, one of our favorite parts of the event. So you've been doing this for a while now. So have you ever gotten a question from the audience that made a lasting impression, a question that still sticks with you today?
Actually, what I would say is this: it's not one particular question, but a few years back, I worked with Solution Tree, and I worked with Rick DeFore and Bob Baker and Becky DeFore and Tom Maney. So many great questions always came up at the panel discussions at PLC Institutes and the PLC Summit, that we ended up taking the great answers and the great questions we got and turned it into a book. So we wrote a book called Concise Answers to Frequently Asked Questions About Professional Learning Communities. But that book, I saved every question we got from every educator from every panel for a whole year. And that's what we answered in the book. So obviously we're getting phenomenal questions from the participants. If we felt like those are such good questions, we're going to keep them all. And we did. And we did. And that turned into that ongoing research, because some people can't come to an event. So we tried to find another way that we can share that kind of information in a different format. A specific question, a concise answer. A specific question, a concise answer. Kind of broken down or organized by topic, by forming teams, by collaboration, by identifying essential standards, by common assessments. So you can go to a topic and then find it. But again, that's how much the panels made an impact upon me, is great questions from educators across the world.
And that's huge as an educator coming to an event like that. And it also, that's one of the things I respect a lot about the education sector, specifically for pre-K through 12. There's the sharing of information. There is no just me and you and then the competition. It's we truly want to take care of each other and provide information as much as possible, because like you said, you were there, you were in the trenches, you were a principal, you were there, a teacher as well, and you understand what all these educators are going through. Even though we're in a different time, we might be in the 21st century, or I don't even know what century we're in, but it's still education.
Yep. I think we naturally attract people to this profession who want to give and help others. If your goal in life was to you just care about yourself and make as much money and acquire as many things as possible, you chose the wrong profession. Probably, if you chose teaching, that's not usually the pathway to personal riches. But what you get in here, that's priceless. That's priceless.
Absolutely. So now your behavior solutions breakout session also, what do you aim for educators to achieve with the session?
Yeah. Thank you for asking that. So the very purpose of a professional learning community is to ensure high levels of learning for all students. High levels, kids learn at grade level or better every year. And you ask any educator this question, would you agree? You have kids in your school right now that have the academic ability to succeed, but unfortunately they lack some of the key behaviors it takes to succeed in school. And it's like, yes, of course, every year that happens. So if we're going to ensure kids learn, then we as a profession and we as a school, we as a district need to be prepared to both teach essential behaviors and then give kids extra time and support to master them. I think that's especially important coming off this pandemic. I hear so many teachers say, well, students are demonstrating some behaviors that are counterproductive to their success. We don't see kids as motivated, as self-engaged, or even attending school. Those are all behaviors. Motivation, doing what you don't want to do but need to do, is a behavior. Attendance is a behavior. It's something that's taught. It's not genetic. And it's always helpful when kids learn those behaviors. They're modeled and taught at home. But we also know some kids might come from a home life where some of those key behaviors are not taught, or maybe, a child has a single parent who's working multiple jobs to pay the rent right now. They would love to model and watch those behaviors at home, but they're working hard just to pay the rent and provide food that night. For whatever reason, we know some kids will not learn those behaviors at home, so we need to teach them at school. There's got to be a school-wide collaborative effort. So we can take the 4 critical questions of the PLC process. What do we expect kids to learn, and how do we know they've learned it, and how do we respond when kids don't learn, and how do we respond when kids already know it? And we can tie those outcomes to behavior too. What are the behaviors we want all kids to learn, and how do we know if they've learned it, and how we respond when kids need extra time and support. So we're going to take the PLC process and tie it to behavior and break it down practically, step by step. What does the research say about how a school, how a district teaches and supports kids in behavior? Our students, due to the pandemic, think about it, socially and emotionally, they were shut down for most kids over a year. So all those experiences of life that kids get behaviorally by just being at school, working with other adults, working with other kids, play on the playground, all that was shut down. So our students are socially and emotionally, developmentally, they got delayed there. So we shouldn't be surprised if we see third graders that act a little more like first graders and seniors that act a little bit more like freshmen. And because of course we can catch them up, but it will take some systematic targeted processes, not just hoping kids behave better. Let's focus on what we can control. That breakout will focus and break that down step by step. And again, it's built upon our book, Behavior Solutions. I want to give credit where credit is due. My name's on the cover of that book. I wrote some of it, but I have 2 dear colleagues, John and Jessica Hannigan, who are just phenomenal experts in both the PLC at work process as well as in behavior. And so it really they get very specific on the specific ways you respond to certain behaviors and how we would teach them, not just punish and threaten kids into better performance.
And I appreciate you bringing up COVID, because I feel like personally, like people behave as if it like didn't happen, or as if it happened like 10 years ago. No, it just happened, and we're still slowly but surely coming out of it in whichever way, in whichever sector that you're part of, and specifically for education. But also, like, I know this is not a good term, but for example, my sister has COVID babies. Like they literally were not part of that, preschool or kindergarten time. Yeah, they were.
That's huge. That's huge.
They don't know how to behave with other kids. They don't know how to behave with other adults. That it's not mom and dad. So I agree with you.
I get the very first school I was principal at was an elementary school where a large percentage of our students, their first day in kindergarten was the first day they'd ever been away from a parent. That their parents didn't send their kids off to childcare. And why? Because honestly, they couldn't afford it. So it was the family together, that larger extended family, the were the caretakers of the youngest. So it's traumatic the first day that you're away from the people you love most on the face of the earth, who know you so well, and you've never had to interact with other adults or children that weren't family or loved ones. And I would see just the terror in some kids' faces. I get it, right? And we help them through, right? Well, just imagine a classroom of kids that are that way, like your sister, right? Where you have almost every kid in the room that, due to the shutdown of our nation and our world, right? Yeah. So So we as educators need to, as you said, remember. I don't know about you. Part of me does want to forget COVID because it's
For
like,
sure.
okay, it's time to move on in life. Come on, come on, come on. Yeah, right. That was a traumatic time, and we want to see better days ahead, and let's go. And that mindset's helpful to a point, but
Right.
not lose compassion
Yeah.
that there are kids and there are adults out there that are still suffering from the impact of that time. And how do we provide not just understanding, but adjust what we do to meet those needs?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. So lastly, I do want to read a comment from a past summit attendee and get your thoughts on it. It's from Nicholas Martin. A teacher commented, all throughout the conference, I felt treated like a professional, though the speakers and breakout sessions challenged us to shed bad practices and gave us the tools to embrace new ones. It was never done in a way that shamed us along our journey. Instead, it empowered us with the tools necessary to go back and begin to shift our focus from teaching to learning. So, as you know, many teachers are feeling an increased amount of pressure over the last few years. And also, we mentioned COVID is a big deal, a big component of that. How does a PLC at work process address the challenges that teachers are under currently?
Let me start by saying the quote you chose, I appreciate. I think the reason why participants leave feeling like they were challenged in a respectful way is because every one of the authors and presenters at that event, we were and are all practitioners.
Mhm.
Um, and so we've lived and sat in the exact same seats the people that are in the audience. So we understand the struggles, the joys of our work, as well as the challenges.
Yeah.
Um, so framing it in a way where we need to get better, but it's not meaning that what we're doing now, we're going to vilify and condemn people for their current practice. People are doing the best they know.
Yeah.
And and I am confident every single educator who attends that event is working beyond contractual hours and what they're being paid. I
Mhm.
mean, a lot. Like
Mhm.
that's just what educators do. They dedicate their own personal time, their family time, their own well-being often where they should be exercising, taking care of themselves. And no, they're not. They're at home grading papers and staying late at night and coming to night events to support kids and and all that is to say we have the right people and and we can't ask them to work harder. It's just working smarter. And as a profession, as we learn more, it's about us getting better. Um, Last comment about this, and I've referenced this a few times, but if we go back to that theme of hope,
Mhm.
hope is not only a belief that tomorrow can be better, it's a pathway forward, and it's a pathway forward that you feel like you have the ability to shape that and make it different. The PLC process, I know of no state or federal laws that deny or restrict you from doing these things. I know of no state law that says, no, you can't work together, teachers. You must work in isolation. You must keep your own kids. That must be your mindset. My kids, your kids. There's no law that says that. You can't have agreement on what all kids must learn. Sure as heck, don't assess kids along the way. I mean, don't know where the kids are. No, 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 no. So there's nothing that's stopping us from doing it. And the things I just referenced are things that don't take extra time and extra money. Us having time to work together. We have meetings all the time. Teachers tell me often, I hate meetings. No, you don't. You hate wasting your time.
Right.
We're meeting, we're just not meeting about the right stuff. We would refocus and repurpose when we get together during our faculty and grade level or department meeting time on the right work. And I think the PLC precedent, I know it honors teachers as experts in their field, and they're not minions to carry out work. They are empowered to make critically important decisions about teaching and learning. But we're doing it collectively and collaboratively for the benefit of our kids instead of individual teachers trying to figure it out in their own room. So for us to have a chance to get together and reinforce if the PLC process is new to someone, they're going to learn the foundation of how. And if you're already on this journey, it's a never-ending process. If Bob Baker, the co-creator of the PLC work process, 25 years later, I can work with him on that revisiting book, and he's talking about things that he's learned over the last year or 2 or 3 that we need to think about. I think if the original author can still continue to grow and find better ways to do this, I bet all of us can reflect on better ways to serve kids. And that's what this is all about. Helping educators learn, because the better we learn, the more our kids are going to learn from us.
Perfect. Yes, exactly. It's an always learning profession, especially and also for experts, or all the experts. And like you say, the faculty that continue to do this, and all of the speakers and all of the keynotes that we have for this event, you are always learning. And that's so, it's really amazing to see, but it's also very inspiring to see that it's not something that it's a one and done deal. Like I'm done. I have my PhD, or I have whatever title that you have in your in the education sector. No, you're continuing to grow because you want to, because you truly believe that that is the purpose and your purpose.
Yep, exactly right. Exactly right. Becoming the students we want our students to be. That's the key.
Exactly. Well, anything else you would like to leave us with before we close out here?
No, but thank you so much. And I guess I'd say to you, to the Solution Tree colleagues of yours, and to the educators who take their precious time to listen to this podcast, I wish you all just a happy holiday season. I hope everyone gets some well-deserved time off and a chance to recharge and be around loved ones and fill your own soul, so you have an opportunity to have more to give to others.
Exactly. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Matters. Thank you for this motivating conversation as we learn more about the Summit on PLC at Work event that's coming up. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care.
This event is definitely another tool for your toolbox with teaching. In addition to learning from Mike Mattis and other presenters, you will also have the chance to test drive some of our digital tools at our EdTech booth, which will also be at the event. If you also want a sneak peek at some of these tools, visit solutiontree.com/digital-tools. Also, if you want to order any of the books that we discussed today, make plans to visit the bookstore that will be on site at the event as well, or visit solutiontree.com. The Summit on PLC at Work is coming up on February 13th through the 15th of 2024, taking place in Phoenix, Arizona. To learn more about this event, navigate to our website, solutiontree.com. Under the Events tab, go to On-Site Events, and then click on the Summit on PLC at Work. All right, now for our sponsor message here at Solution Tree, we share your vision to transform education to ensure learning for all, and we can help you make this vision a reality. No other professional learning company provides our unique blend of research-based, results-driven services that improve learning outcomes for our students. All right, we appreciate you tuning in here. Make sure to navigate to our solutiontree.com/podcast page to listen to our other episodes. There you can subscribe to our podcast today on your favorite app. Also, on our Solution Tree YouTube channel, remember you can like our episodes and also subscribe to that channel. This has been your host, Prisma Lopez Marine. Thank you for joining us for Charting the Paths in Pre-K through 12 Education.